The more you ignore her, the more she feels it. Stoic comeback, Stoic life lessons. Stoicism. What if the real power lies not in chasing, but in walking away? What if the more you ignore her, the more she feels your absence? Most people get this wrong. They think proving their worth will make her come back, but that only confirms what she already believes, that she's in control. But when you stop, truly stop, everything shifts. Think about it. When do people miss someone the most? Not when they're always around, but when they disappear. Silence is power. Absence creates doubt. And doubt? That's the seed of regret. She expects you to break, but when you vanish like she never mattered, it unsettles her. The strongest position is the one of least attachment. In this video, I'll show you how to reclaim your power with Stoic principles, how to detach, rebuild, and make her feel your absence. If you're ready to master your emotions, hit like, subscribe, and comment below. I control my emotions. They don't control me. Now let's begin. 1. The power of absence. The power of absence is an undeniable force rooted in human nature, a concept deeply embedded in psychology and reinforced by timeless wisdom. People rarely appreciate what is constantly available, but the moment something disappears, its value skyrockets. This is the contrast principle at work. The same reason we don't think about the air we breathe until we're gasping for it. The same logic applies to relationships. When you are always present, always chasing, always proving yourself, you become predictable. Predictability breeds complacency, and complacency is the death of attraction. We begin to lose interest in anything we take for granted, as Seneca wisely observed. The moment you remove yourself from the equation, something powerful happens. The mind starts filling in the blanks. Silence creates space for curiosity, and curiosity leads to doubt. Doubt about the decisions she made, doubt about whether she truly understood your worth, doubt about whether she let go of something valuable. And doubt, when left to grow, turns into regret. This is why scarcity has such a profound effect on human psychology. The rarer something is, the more desirable it becomes. But to harness this effect, you must embrace complete silence. No texts, no calls, no social media engagement. Nothing. In a world where instant gratification reigns, where attention is currency, your refusal to engage disrupts the expected pattern. She will initially act unbothered, perhaps even defiant, projecting an image of someone who has moved on without hesitation. But inside, the story is different. The same woman who seemed so sure of her decision will now find herself wondering. She will check her phone, expecting a message that never comes. She will scroll through social media, looking for signs of your presence. She will begin to question whether she truly had the upper hand, or if, in fact, she underestimated you. The key to reclaiming your power isn't through words or actions aimed at her. It's through disciplined detachment, through the unwavering control of your emotions. You must resist the temptation to seek validation, to prove a point, or to re-establish communication. Your silence speaks louder than any argument you could ever make. It signals that you are a man of self-respect, a man who does not beg for acknowledgement, a man who understands that value isn't proven through pursuit, but through presence, or in this case, the strategic lack of it. What is Stoicism if not the mastery of the self? It teaches that we do not control external events, only our response to them. In this case, your response to rejection or abandonment should not be desperation, but composure. It should not be pursuit, but presence, an unshaken presence in your own life, your own growth, your own purpose. This is where modern life offers a lesson. In an age of constant digital noise, where attention spans are shrinking and everyone is vying for validation, the ability to disengage is a superpower. It signals that you are different, that you do not need external confirmation of your worth. And as you pull back, she will feel the shift. She will notice the void. She will begin to question herself. And in that questioning, the dynamic changes. The moment she realizes she may have misjudged you, the balance of power tilts. But here's the real secret. By the time she starts questioning, you will have changed. You will have evolved beyond the version of yourself that once needed her approval. You will have embraced the ultimate Stoic life lesson, that true strength comes from within, from a place of self-control and self-sufficiency. This is the power of absence. It is not manipulation, but mastery. It is not a game, but a principle of human nature. It is the quiet force that turns certainty into doubt, attraction into longing, and regret into a lesson learned too late. As Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. When you no longer crave validation, when you no longer need to be seen, that is when you become truly valuable. And in the end, that is what she will feel the most. Not your presence, but your absence. 2. The power of indifference. Indifference is one of the most powerful tools you can wield, not just in relationships, but in life itself. Genuine indifference signals unshakable strength, a state of mind that cannot be manipulated, controlled, or swayed by external forces. The Stoics understood this well, which is why they taught that mastering one's emotions is the key to true power. In a world where everyone is reacting, those who remain composed stand out. When a woman expects an emotional response, be it anger, jealousy, or sadness, and receives nothing, it unsettles her. Why? Because emotions are leverage, and those who control them dictate the terms of engagement. If you explode in anger or wallow in sorrow, she knows she still holds influence over you. But if you respond with complete emotional detachment, she is left questioning everything. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. And this is where true dominance lies, not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself." In life, have you ever seen a man lose his composure in a negotiation, in a workplace dispute, or in an argument? The one who reacts emotionally always loses. The calm, composed individual, however, commands respect. This principle applies to relationships as well. When a woman pulls away or tries to test your emotions, she expects a response. She expects you to plead, to get frustrated, to prove yourself. But what happens when you do nothing? When you remain unaffected, her curiosity begins to rise. Human nature dictates that we crave what we cannot have and devalue what is always available. If she senses that you are completely detached, it forces her to reevaluate her decision. She starts looking for signs of weakness, scanning your social media, asking mutual friends, hoping to find proof that you still care. But when she finds nothing, no emotional reaction, no signs of pain, her mind spirals. Doubt creeps in. The certainty she once had about leaving or testing you now dissolves into unease, and unease leads to regret. This is where the Stoic mindset comes into play. In Stoicism Today, One of the most important lessons is learning to control what is within our power and letting go of what isn't. If a relationship ends, or if someone distances themselves, you don't chase, you don't explain, you don't seek validation. You accept reality and move forward with composure. True Stoic happiness isn't found in controlling others, but in being in control of oneself. The more indifferent you are to outcomes, the more power you hold. But this must be genuine. Fake indifference is easily spotted. You cannot just pretend not to care while secretly hoping for a reaction. That's not strength, that's manipulation. True indifference comes from understanding that your worth is not determined by another person's perception of you. It comes from knowing that whether she stays or goes, you remain the same man, focused, composed, and in control of his own destiny. A great example of this can be seen in the professional world. Think of a top executive who negotiates multi-million-dollar deals. He doesn't beg, he doesn't show desperation, he presents his offer and remains indifferent to whether the other party accepts or not. That confidence alone increases his perceived value. Now, apply this same principle to relationships. The moment you stop seeking approval, the moment you stop reacting emotionally, you become the one in control. She might have expected you to break, but instead she finds a man who is unfazed, unbothered, and entirely self-sufficient. That realization is powerful. It forces her to confront the idea that maybe she misjudged you. Maybe she walked away from something valuable, and maybe, just maybe, she was wrong. This isn't about playing mind games. It's about self-mastery. It's about becoming a man who does not need external validation to feel whole. When you develop this level of emotional resilience, life itself becomes easier. Rejection doesn't shake you, setbacks don't break you, and people naturally gravitate towards those who exude this kind of strength. As Epictetus wisely stated, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. The ability to remain indifferent is a superpower in a world where people are addicted to emotional reactions. So, ask yourself, who really has the power? The one who begs for attention, or the one who walks away with complete composure? The answer is clear. In the end, indifference isn't about proving anything to her. It's about proving to yourself that you are in complete control of your emotions. And that, my friend, is true dominance. 3. You were never chasing her, you were chasing validation. You see, the real struggle isn't about her. It never was. The pain you feel, the endless overthinking, the late-night regrets, they aren't about losing her, but about losing the validation she gave you. Was it truly love, or was it the feeling of being wanted, chosen, and seen that kept you attached? Most men, when reflecting honestly, realize they weren't chasing the woman, they were chasing the feeling of being enough in her eyes. And when that validation disappears, it leaves a void, one that feels unbearable, like a withdrawal from an addiction. Because that's exactly what it is, an addiction to approval, a reliance on someone else to define your worth. But here's the brutal truth. If you truly loved her, you would have first learned to love yourself. How can you claim to care for someone deeply when you don't even give yourself the same level of care, respect, and validation? The greatest deception men fall into is believing that their worth is something to be earned from others, rather than something that is inherently theirs. When you base your sense of self on her approval, you set yourself up for disappointment. You hand over control of your happiness, your confidence, and your identity to someone else. And if she decides to walk away, she takes all of that with her. But a high-value man, a man who understands Win's Stoic principles, doesn't place his value in the hands of others. He doesn't need to be chosen to feel worthy because he already knows his worth. He validates himself through his own discipline, achievements, and self-respect. Instead of looking to a woman to feel significant, he cultivates a mindset of self-sufficiency. When you reach this level of internal validation, you become untouchable, emotionally resilient, unfazed by rejection, and indifferent to whether someone stays or leaves. And, ironically, the moment you stop needing her validation is the moment she starts needing yours. This is the paradox of self-sufficiency. Women are naturally drawn to men who don't need them for validation because such men exude confidence and independence. They carry themselves with the quiet assurance that they are enough, with or without her. And this is attractive because it signals strength. The kind of strength that cannot be manipulated, the kind that makes her question whether she ever really had a grip on you in the first place. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." When you crave validation from her, you operate from a position of scarcity, and scarcity repels attraction. But when you stop seeking, when you stop craving, when you are completely indifferent to external validation, you operate from a position of abundance. And abundance breeds desire. The choice is yours, but understand this: until you learn to validate yourself, you will always be at the mercy of those who give and take their approval at will. But when you master self-trification, you become the prize. The man who is respected not for what he needs from others, but for what he already possesses within himself. This is the essence of Stoicism today: detachment from external approval and complete control over one's own mindset. Win Stoic, embody self-sufficiency, and watch how the world, and yes, even the woman who once left, begins to see you differently. But by then, will you even care? 4. The Stoic mindset. Detach or be destroyed. The truth about heartbreak is simple. You either let it consume you, leaving you weak, obsessed, and emotionally drained, or you detach and become stronger than you ever were before. And that choice, no matter how difficult, is entirely in your hands. This is where the Stoic mindset comes into play, because Stoic life lessons are not about ignoring pain, but about mastering it. What is Stoicism, if not the art of controlling what is within our power and letting go of what is not? You do not control her actions, her choices, or her regrets, but you do control how you respond. The problem most men face isn't the heartbreak itself, it's what they do with it. They spend hours, days, sometimes even years analyzing her words, her actions, her social media posts, trying to decode hidden messages, hoping to understand why she left or whether she still thinks about them. But that path leads only to self-destruction. It puts her at the center of your world, while you sit on the sidelines, paralyzed by emotions she no longer considers. A man who follows Stoic principles understands that seeking closure is a trap. What good will another conversation, another explanation, or another apology do? It won't change the fact that she left. It won't restore what has already been broken. The Stoic man does not chase, does not beg, and does not waste energy on what is beyond his control. Instead, he turns inward, focuses on discipline, personal development, and rebuilding himself into a version so strong, so resilient, that he no longer seeks validation from her or anyone else. This is not a rejection of emotions, but a refinement of them. It is recognizing that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And once you embrace this, you become untouchable. Detachment is the key to emotional freedom. When you stop needing her validation, stop seeking answers, and stop making her the focus of your thoughts, you regain power. You are no longer a man waiting for someone else's actions to dictate how you feel. Instead, you build a life so full, so rich with purpose and self-respect that her presence or absence becomes irrelevant. The moment you stop caring, the moment you no longer react, is the moment she starts noticing, because while she may have expected you to crumble, she will instead see you thriving. She will see the version of you that has grown beyond her, a man whose confidence no longer relies on her approval. And that is when the real shift occurs, not when she regrets leaving, but when you realize you no longer care whether she does. Seneca once said, "He who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than is necessary." That is the mistake of most men. They extend their suffering by refusing to let go. But the Stoic man chooses differently. He detaches, he grows, and in doing so he wins, not just over her, but over himself. Because true victory is not in proving her wrong, it is in proving to yourself that you are always enough. If you've made it this far, you're already reclaiming your power. Drop a comment saying, "I control my emotions," to show your commitment to mastering the Stoic mindset. Stay focused, stay strong. This is just the beginning. 5. The reverse chase. Making her feel your absence. The key to making her feel your absence isn't in chasing, convincing, or proving your worth. It's in mastering the power of doing nothing. Most men make the mistake of thinking they need to take action, to send that perfectly crafted text, to remind her of what she lost, to spark some kind of emotional reaction in her. But the real move, the one that actually flips the script, is detachment. Stoicism today teaches us that control is an illusion, except when it comes to our own emotions and reactions. The moment you stop reacting, stop seeking, stop trying to influence her decisions, she starts to feel something unexpected. Doubt. Doubt about her choices, doubt about how much power she really had over you, doubt about whether she misjudged your value. Because when you step back completely, when your presence no longer lingers in her life, something unsettling happens. She starts to wonder, and curiosity is a dangerous thing when left unchecked. It grows, it festers, it turns into something she never expected. Regret. When do you miss something the most? It's not when it's always available, it's when it suddenly disappears. The restaurant you never paid attention to until it closes. The friend who never says no until one day they do. The person who was always an option until they no longer are. Human nature is wired to chase what retreats, to want what feels unattainable. This is why the Stoic mindset is so powerful. When you remove yourself, you don't just create space, you create a vacuum. And vacuums demand to be filled. If you've been present in her life, even subtly, she never has to question where you stand. But when you become truly absent, no texts, no likes, no indirect reminders of your existence, her mind starts playing tricks on her. This is where the real test begins. She will not come running back immediately. That's not how this works. Instead, she will test you. She will send out subtle signals, an unexpected text, a random like on social media, a casual comment through mutual friends. These are not acts of affection, they are acts of control. She wants to see if she still has a grip on you, if she can still command your attention with minimal effort, and most men fail here. The moment she makes contact, they react. They take the bait, thinking it's a sign of rekindled interest, when in reality it's just her confirming that she still has power over them. The second you engage, you reset the power dynamic. You prove that despite your silence, you were still waiting, still hoping, still emotionally invested. But the win Stoic move, you remain indifferent, cold, unmoved. Because the more she sees that her efforts are met with nothing, the more her doubts turn into obsession. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And bravery in this case is the ability to sit with discomfort, to resist the urge to respond, to allow space for the unknown to work in your favor. If you want her to feel your absence, truly feel it, you must let silence do the work. The hardest part is trusting that doing nothing is the most powerful move you can make. But when you do, when you truly let go, you gain something far more valuable than her attention. You gain control over yourself. And in the end, that's the real victory. Because whether she comes back or not, you have already won. Stoic happiness isn't found in whether someone regrets losing you. It's found in reaching a place where you no longer need them to. 6. How to kill her curiosity, the silent mystery. The most powerful move you can make isn't sending a message, posting a subtle quote, or proving a point. It's silence. True, complete, unwavering silence. This is where Stoic principles come into play, because a high-value man does not beg for attention, nor does he seek validation through breadcrumbs of engagement. He understands that the human mind despises uncertainty. The moment you remove yourself completely, no posts, no updates, no reactions, you become a mystery, and mystery breeds curiosity. And curiosity, left unchecked, grows into obsession. When she has no access to your thoughts, no idea where you stand, her mind begins to fill in the blanks, often with negative assumptions. She wonders why you're not reacting, why you're not chasing, why you seem completely indifferent. And that's where the shift happens, not when you try to make her notice you, but when she realizes she no longer holds any influence over you. Most men, unfortunately, make the mistake of trying to play this game halfway. They remove themselves but still check her stories. They don't message her but post indirect motivational quotes, hoping she sees. They maintain just enough presence to ensure she still remembers them. But what does this really communicate? That she still controls your mind, that despite your silence, you are still waiting, still reacting, still seeking some form of acknowledgement. But a man who embraces the Stoic mindset understands that true power lies in detachment. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, let go of the need to be seen. Let go of the fear of being forgotten. Let go of the desire to prove anything at all. When you do, you become something far more powerful than a man seeking validation. You become an unknown, an unpredictable force she can no longer read. And here's where it gets interesting. The more unavailable you become, the more desperate she becomes to figure you out. Because the truth is, she expected you to crumble. She expected you to show signs of weakness, to seek closure, to leave trails for her to follow. When you don't, when you remain a ghost in her world, she starts spiraling. At first, she brushes it off, thinking you're playing games. But as time goes on and you remain silent, doubt creeps in. Was she wrong? Did she misjudge your worth? Is she the one who lost something valuable? That's when the power dynamic flips, not because you tried to make her jealous, not because you manipulated the situation, but because you genuinely stopped caring. A high-value man does not operate from a place of desperation. He does not need to prove his worth to anyone. And that level of confidence, that level of non-reactivity is what drives people crazy. Because in a world where everyone is constantly seeking attention, the one who does not care stands out. Seneca once wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." Many men extend their own suffering by refusing to let go. They hold onto hope, onto what-ifs, onto the idea that she will return if they just play their cards right. But the truth is, the only way to truly win is to remove yourself from the game altogether. When you reach that point, when her absence no longer affects you, when you no longer seek validation from her or anyone else, you have already won. That is the essence of win Stoic thinking. The realization that your peace, your power, and your presence are not dictated by whether she notices you, but by whether you notice yourself. The real power is not in making her regret, but in reaching a point where it no longer matters if she does. 7. Emotional mastery. Never let her see you sweat. The true mark of a man isn't in how much he can lift, how much money he makes, or how many people he can command. It's in his ability to control himself, especially when faced with emotional adversity. The moment you lose control, even slightly, you hand her power. A sigh of frustration, a subtle look of disappointment, a single emotionally charged reaction, each one is a confirmation that she still controls you. And the truth is, she will test you. She will push buttons, provoke jealousy, create uncertainty, and attempt to make you feel small, not necessarily because she's cruel, but because human nature is wired to test boundaries. She might pretend to move on quickly, flaunt new attention, or drop subtle hints to see if you react. If you give her any sign that you are emotionally shaken, she knows she still has leverage. But when you remain indifferent, unreadable, and unaffected, you become something entirely different, something that unnerves her. Because a man who does not react is a man who cannot be controlled. Epictetus once said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." That is the essence of emotional mastery, and it is one of the greatest Stoic life lessons you can adopt. So what is Stoicism in the context of relationships? It is the ability to stand firm like an immovable force in the face of provocation. When she attempts to trigger an emotional response, when she expects jealousy, when she anticipates anger or sadness, and you instead give her nothing, just calm, composed certainty, she begins to question everything. Is she not as important as she thought? Did she overestimate her impact on you? Is it possible that you never truly needed her validation to begin with? And this realization is deeply unsettling for someone who expected to have emotional control over you. This is why emotional mastery is lethal. It makes you unpredictable. It removes you from the category of men who can be manipulated, men who can be broken, men who orbit around her approval. And the second she senses that she cannot shake you, the power dynamic shifts completely. Most men, however, fail this test because they let their emotions dictate their behavior. They react impulsively, fueled by frustration or a need to prove something. They send that angry text, they engage in petty mind games, they seek closure when none is needed. But a man who has mastered himself never seeks validation from the outside. Strength is not in chasing, proving, or reacting. Strength is in restraint, in knowing that the moment you refuse to engage in emotional theatrics, you hold all the cards. And here's the irony. When you refuse to react, when you remain cold and indifferent to her attempts to provoke you, she begins to lose control instead. What she once thought was power over you turns into doubt within herself. She begins questioning why you are unaffected, why you are so composed, why her actions no longer seem to reach you, and, in that uncertainty, the power dynamic flips. But here's the most important lesson. This isn't about playing games. This isn't about pretending to be indifferent while secretly obsessing. It's about truly detaching, about cultivating emotional control, not just for her, but for yourself. A high-value man does not crumble under pressure. He does not seek comfort in reactive behavior. He understands that true power comes from within, from a place of discipline and unshakable confidence. 8. The final lesson. You never needed her anyway. The final lesson, the one that changes everything, is this. You never needed her in the first place. The attachment, the pain, the longing, it was never about her. It was about the illusion you created, the belief that she was the source of your happiness, the thing that completed you. But the truth, the one most men fail to realize until it's too late, is that she was never the prize. You were. The pain of losing her wasn't because she was irreplaceable. It was because you tied your sense of self-worth to her validation. And now, as you step back, as you embrace Stoicism today, as you learn to cultivate Stoic happiness without relying on her presence, you begin to see what was always there. You were whole from the start. Epictetus once said, "Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems." And that's exactly what losing her was. An imagined problem, a constructed fear, a belief that without her, something was missing. But as you grow, as you rebuild, as you evolve into a version of yourself that no longer seeks approval, you realize that nothing was missing except your own understanding of your worth. Real transformation happens not when you try to prove something to her, but when you no longer feel the need to. When you stop seeking her attention, when you stop wishing for her regret, when you detach completely and focus entirely on becoming a man of strength, discipline, and purpose, something profound happens. You evolve into someone she can no longer access. And this is where the real power shift occurs. Most men remain stuck in the past, clinging to an outdated version of themselves, waiting for closure or validation that never comes. But those who truly embrace a Stoic mindset understand that the goal isn't to make her regret. It's to grow so much that the man she left no longer exists. The best revenge, as Marcus Aurelius said, is to be unlike him who performed the injury. And that's exactly what happens when you commit to self-mastery. You become unrecognizable, not just to her, but to your former self. The insecurities, the neediness, the desire to be chosen, these things fade because you no longer seek external validation. You no longer need it. You've built a life so fulfilling, a mind so strong, that her absence is irrelevant. And here's the irony. This is what makes her feel the deepest regret. It's not losing a man who was emotionally dependent on her. It's losing a man who became untouchable. A man she can no longer affect, no longer manipulate, no longer reach. That realization is far worse than losing someone who begged, who chased, who waited, because deep down she expected you to still be there. She expected to have access to you, to be able to check in and see that you were still thinking about her, still hoping, still affected. But when she looks back and sees that you are no longer the same man, that you have transcended the version of yourself she once knew, that's when the weight of her decision truly hits. She realizes she didn't just lose a man, she lost the opportunity to ever be in his world again. And that is what real regret looks like. Seneca once wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." Too many men fear loss as if it's permanent, as if their happiness is bound to one person, when in reality the greatest freedom comes from realizing that no one holds the key to your fulfillment but you. If you've made it this far, then you already understand that Stoic life lessons are not about revenge, but about reclaiming your power, your independence, and your emotional resilience. What is Stoicism if not the ability to stand firm in the face of adversity, to control what is within your grasp, and to let go of what is? The moment you shift your focus from her to yourself, from needing validation to self-development, from emotional reaction to complete composure, you become untouchable. And that is the ultimate power. So, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with an affirmation that reinforces your strength. Say it and own it. I control my emotions. They do not control me. My silence creates power. I validate myself. No one else has that authority. Every time you remind yourself of this truth, you take another step toward true freedom. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another lesson in Stoic happiness. This is Win Stoic, and as always, stay strong, stay untouchable. Learning to ignore will help us be happier. Have you ever felt mentally drained by the endless noise of opinions, expectations, and unnecessary worries? In a world where we are constantly bombarded with information and judgment, it's easy to get caught in a cycle of stress and emotional exhaustion. Many of us, especially those still learning to navigate life's challenges, struggle to filter out what truly matters from what is merely noise. But what if the key to a happier life lies not in reacting, but in learning to ignore? Every day we hear stories of anxiety, burnout, and depression. I used to wonder, why do people let trivial matters consume their peace of mind? The answer is simple. We lack the mental discipline to ignore what doesn't serve us. But if we could master the art of selective attention, we could reclaim our inner peace and happiness. In this video, we'll explore how learning to ignore opinions, negativity, and distractions can lead to a calmer, more fulfilling life. Welcome to Win Stoic. Let's dive in. 1. Causes of unhappiness. The causes of unhappiness are many, and while we often look outward for someone or something to blame, the truth is that much of our suffering comes from within. Work dissatisfaction, feelings of isolation, and unfulfilled expectations can create a deep sense of frustration, leading us to believe that life has conspired against us. When our careers don't progress as expected, we attribute it to bad luck, unfair managers, or circumstances beyond our control. When colleagues distance themselves, we assume their intentions are malicious, rather than considering that their behavior might have nothing to do with us at all. Our minds are wired to look for threats, and this often translates into taking everything personally. The Stoics, however, remind us that our interpretation of events determines our emotional state. This same mindset applies to relationships, where expectations often lead to deep disappointment. Many people dive into love thinking they understand it, only to experience profound heartbreak when things don't go as planned. We pour ourselves into relationships, expecting that our efforts will be reciprocated in full. When they aren't, when love fades, or when a partner leaves, the pain can feel unbearable. But is it truly the loss that torments us, or our belief that things should have turned out differently? Epictetus teaches us, when something happens, the only thing in your power is your attitude toward it. You can either accept it or resent it. If we view relationships as transient, appreciating them for what they are rather than clinging to what we wish they would be, we remove a great deal of unnecessary suffering. Love, like all things, is subject to change, and the more we resist this truth, the more we struggle. Beyond work and relationships, another significant cause of unhappiness is our obsession with control. We believe that if we just plan well enough, work hard enough, and say the right things, we can dictate the outcomes of our lives. Another source of unnecessary suffering is our tendency to seek validation from others. We crave approval, fearing rejection and disapproval as though they are threats to our survival. We let the opinions of others dictate our self-worth, constantly adjusting ourselves to fit expectations that may not even align with our own values. If you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have turned over control of yourself to another person. Epictetus. Why should we let others determine how we feel about ourselves? In modern life, social media amplifies this problem. We compare our lives to carefully curated images of others, mistaking their highlights for reality and feeling inadequate as a result. But comparison is a thief of joy. The more we seek validation externally, the further we drift from true contentment. Instead, the path to happiness lies in self-sufficiency, learning to be content with who we are, regardless of how others perceive us. This is what Stoicism teaches us, that real confidence comes from within, not from external validation. Our inability to ignore the insignificant is yet another major source of unhappiness. We let trivial annoyances take up too much space in our minds, reacting emotionally to every minor inconvenience. A rude cashier, a slow driver, an offhand remark. These small moments can ruin our entire day if we let them. Another vital lesson in the pursuit of happiness is understanding the impermanence of all things. People change, circumstances shift, and nothing remains the same forever. Clinging to what is temporary only leads to suffering. Instead, we should embrace change as a natural part of life. To love only what happens, what was destined, no greater harmony. Marcus Aurelius. The ability to flow with change rather than resist it is a hallmark of inner peace. When we accept that nothing lasts forever, neither success nor failure, joy nor sorrow, we develop resilience. This resilience allows us to face life's inevitable challenges with a calm and steady mind. 2. The price of happiness. Happiness is the ultimate goal of life, yet it remains one of the most difficult things to attain. It's not about wealth, fame, or external achievements. These things may provide temporary pleasure, but they do not guarantee lasting contentment. If happiness were as simple as having money or status, then why do we constantly hear about celebrities, billionaires, and successful individuals battling depression, anxiety, and even thoughts of suicide? This sobering reality reminds us that happiness is not something that can be bought or won. It is something we must cultivate from within. The truth is, happiness comes at a price. Not in dollars, but in mindset, discipline, and perspective. It requires us to let go of expectations, to accept life as it unfolds, and, most importantly, to master the art of ignoring the things that do not serve us. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This means that true happiness is not found in the pursuit of more, but in learning to be content with less. It is about shifting our focus away from what we lack and learning to appreciate what we already have. In today's world, distractions are everywhere, and most of them do nothing but steal our peace. Social media constantly bombards us with curated images of perfection, making us feel inadequate in comparison. The news feeds us endless negativity, filling our minds with anxiety and fear. People's opinions, judgments, and expectations weigh us down, making us question our self-worth. But how often do we stop to ask ourselves, do these things truly matter? Are the opinions of strangers on the internet worth our energy? Should we allow the endless pursuit of material success to dictate our well-being? The Stoic mindset teaches us to filter out the noise, to focus only on what is within our control, and to detach from everything else. Epictetus famously said, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within your control, and some things are not." Once we embrace this, life becomes much simpler. Instead of wasting time and energy on things we cannot change, like what others think of us, the past, or the unpredictable nature of the future, we can channel our efforts into what truly matters: our thoughts, actions, and responses to life's challenges. Happiness, then, is not about eliminating difficulties, but about changing how we respond to them. Life will never be perfect, and waiting for everything to align in our favor is a guaranteed way to remain unhappy. Instead, we must train ourselves to see challenges as opportunities, setbacks as lessons, and discomfort as a path to growth. A Stoic mindset does not mean being indifferent to life's struggles. It means facing them with wisdom, courage, and acceptance. The more we learn to ignore the trivial, the unnecessary, and the uncontrollable, the more space we create for peace, gratitude, and true joy. 3. How to become happier. Happiness begins with a fundamental truth. If you don't value yourself, no one else truly will. You may have heard the saying, "Those who don't cherish themselves aren't worthy of love," and while it may sound harsh, it carries a powerful lesson. Self-worth is the foundation upon which happiness is built. In a world that constantly pushes us to seek validation from others, it's easy to forget that true contentment doesn't come from external praise, relationships, or achievements, but from how we see ourselves. If we don't prioritize self-respect, how can we expect others to treat us with respect? If we constantly doubt our worth, how can we ever feel truly fulfilled? Learning to ignore unnecessary criticism, external pressures, and unrealistic expectations is one of the most liberating skills we can develop. Think about how much time and energy we waste worrying about what others think. We adjust our behavior to fit into social expectations, fearing rejection or disapproval. But what if we learned to ignore the noise? High-value men understand that their worth isn't dictated by fleeting judgments or shallow validation. It is built on inner confidence, discipline, and a deep understanding of what truly matters. If you look at the great minds of history, philosophers, innovators, and leaders, you'll notice a common trait. They weren't consumed by public opinion. Instead, they followed their own principles, even when the world misunderstood them. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Think about that for a moment. Why do we allow people who don't even know our full story to dictate how we feel about ourselves? The truth is, happiness is a byproduct of self-acceptance. It doesn't come from external rewards, but from mastering your own mind. You must learn to filter what truly matters from the distractions that surround you. Ask yourself, how often do you let negative comments ruin your day? How often do you dwell on past mistakes instead of focusing on the present moment? Seneca wisely stated, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And isn't that true? Most of our pain comes not from actual events, but from how we perceive them. The good news is, perception can be changed. The ability to ignore what doesn't serve us is a superpower that can transform our lives. How do you start valuing yourself more? First, Stop seeking validation where it doesn't matter. Your worth is not measured by likes, comments, or someone else's fleeting attention. Win Stoic by cultivating an unshakable mindset. Second, set boundaries. You don't have to entertain every argument, respond to every insult, or prove yourself to those who aren't willing to understand you. Third, practice self-care, not just in the sense of physical health, but mentally and emotionally. What kind of conversations do you allow in your mind? Do you speak to yourself with kindness or criticism? The way you treat yourself internally is the standard you set for how others will treat you. At the end of the day, happiness isn't about living a life free of problems. It's about mastering the art of emotional resilience. It's about standing firm in who you are, regardless of the noise around you. 4. Let go of past mistakes. Life is a journey filled with lessons, and many of the most valuable ones come from our mistakes. Yet too often we allow the past to haunt us, replaying our missteps like a broken record, punishing ourselves for things we can no longer change. But what does this accomplish? Nothing but suffering. As Marcus Aurelius wisely stated, think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now, take what's left and live it properly. This is one of the most powerful Stoic life lessons. The past is gone, and all that remains is the present and what we choose to do with it. Instead of allowing old regrets to drain our energy, we must treat them as lessons that have shaped us into wiser, stronger men. Every mistake, every wrong turn, every moment of failure is not a weight to carry, but a stepping stone toward a better future. The question isn't whether we have made mistakes, we all have, but whether we will use them to our advantage or allow them to define us. The men who have achieved greatness later in life, many of them didn't have a smooth path. They made poor decisions, suffered setbacks, and lost opportunities, but they refused to be trapped by their past. Consider Colonel Sanders, who failed in multiple business ventures before founding KFC at the age of 65, or Ray Kroc, who didn't turn McDonald's into a global empire until his 50s. These men could have looked back and said, "It's too late, I've made too many mistakes." But they didn't. Instead, they focused on what they could do with the time they had left. This is what Stoicism teaches us, that our past does not control our future, our mindset does. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Holding on to regrets is a reaction that drains us, while learning from them is a response that empowers us. We often hear people say, "If only I had done things differently." But dwelling on hypotheticals is a waste of the present moment. No amount of regret will rewrite history, just as no amount of guilt will undo a past mistake. Let go of the what-ifs and the should-haves. Instead, ask yourself, what can I do now? Because that is the only question that holds real power. The past is a teacher, not a prison. The mistakes you made in your youth, whether in business, relationships, or personal choices, were not failures. They were lessons. They taught you what not to do, where to be cautious, and how to grow. The truth is, no man reaches his 40, 50, or 60s without carrying some form of regret. Perhaps it was a marriage that didn't work out, a business that failed, a friendship lost, or an opportunity missed. But these things do not define you, they refine you. The best way to honor the past is to live the present well. Seneca reminds us every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Your past mistakes do not disqualify you from happiness or success, they prepare you for it. The only question is, will you let go and move forward, or will you stay stuck in a past you cannot change? High-value men understand that their time is too precious to be wasted on self-pity. Instead of looking back with regret, they look ahead with purpose. They use their experiences, good and bad, as fuel for personal growth. 5. Stop caring too much about others' opinions. Too many of us spend our lives shackled by the opinions of others, constantly adjusting who we are to fit expectations that may not even align with our own values. But here's the hard truth. Most people's opinions about you are based on their own biases, insecurities, and limited perspectives, not on an objective understanding of your worth. Stoic happiness isn't found in being liked, praised, or validated by everyone around us. It is found in being at peace with who we are, regardless of external noise. Stoicism today reminds us that the opinions of others are just that, opinions, not facts. They are reflections of their mindset, not an accurate measure of our value. We've all seen it. Someone avoids taking a risk because they're afraid of what people will say. Maybe it's the man who stays in a career he hates because his friends and family expect stability. Maybe it's the entrepreneur who hesitates to launch a business out of fear of ridicule. Maybe it's the guy who's passionate about a certain hobby but hides it because he worries others will think it's silly. But here's the question. Who benefits from that kind of self-censorship? Certainly not you. The people whose opinions you fear, they will move on, busy with their own lives, while you are left dealing with the regret of not living authentically. Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's not an invitation to ignore wisdom or advice, but rather a call to develop a Stoic mindset, one that filters out what is useful and discards the rest. The truth is, high-value men do not concern themselves with every passing opinion because they understand that their time and energy are too valuable to be wasted on unnecessary worry. They listen selectively, evaluating feedback with logic rather than emotion. They know that not every critique deserves a response, not every comment requires reflection, and certainly not every opinion carries weight. How many times have you stopped yourself from speaking up, making a decision, or following a path you truly wanted because you feared judgment? How often have you let someone else's words take up space in your mind, dictating how you see yourself? When you start filtering external opinions, you take back control of your own life. And this doesn't mean rejecting all feedback. There is wisdom in listening to those who have your best interests at heart, but it does mean distinguishing between helpful advice and baseless criticism. At the end of the day, happiness is a byproduct of inner peace, and you cannot have inner peace if your mind is constantly occupied by the expectations and judgments of others. Stoic happiness is about freeing yourself from the need for external validation and developing an unshakable sense of self. The world will always have opinions, people will always have something to say, but their words only have power if you give them power. 6. Remove unnecessary burdens. Many men carry unnecessary burdens, often without even realizing it. They take on responsibilities that are not theirs, say yes to commitments they should have declined, and stress over problems that don't truly impact their lives in the long run. Over time, this accumulation of mental and emotional baggage leads to frustration, exhaustion, and disappointment. But here's the truth. Happiness isn't about doing more, it's about doing less of what drains you and more of what truly matters. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." How often do we burden ourselves with problems that aren't even ours to solve? How many times do we let the expectations of others dictate our time, energy, and peace of mind? If you find yourself feeling constantly overwhelmed, ask yourself, are these burdens truly necessary? Or have I taken them on out of obligation, guilt, or fear of saying no? A key Stoic life lesson is learning to distinguish between what is essential and what is simply noise. Modern life has made it easy to fall into the trap of busyness. We glorify being overworked, wearing exhaustion like a badge of honor. But constantly taking on unnecessary burdens does not make you more valuable. It only drains you of the energy you need for what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you seek tranquility, do less. The idea is not to avoid responsibility, but to be intentional with it. High-value men understand this. They do not waste their time on pointless obligations or let trivial concerns steal their peace. They focus on what truly moves the needle in their lives, whether that's their health, family, meaningful work, or personal growth. One of the most liberating things a man can do is to learn the power of ignoring. Ignoring negativity, distractions, and tasks that do not contribute to his well-being allows him to focus on what truly enriches his life. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This doesn't just apply to material wealth, but to mental and emotional clutter as well. The fewer burdens you carry, the more time and energy you have to focus on the things that bring true fulfillment. The world will always demand more from you, more of your time, your energy, your attention, but you get to decide what deserves a place in your life. You get to decide what to hold on to and what to release. So, how do you start letting go? First, learn to say no without guilt. Not every request deserves your yes, and not every problem is yours to fix. Second, cut out unnecessary negativity, whether that's toxic relationships, constant exposure to bad news, or getting caught up in pointless arguments. Third, focus on your own priorities rather than trying to meet everyone else's expectations. The reality is, most of the stress we carry is self-inflicted. The moment you recognize that you have the power to lighten your load, you begin to understand the true meaning of Stoic happiness. Instead of living in reaction to everything around you, you start living with purpose. You create space for peace, joy, and clarity. At the end of the day, happiness is not found in wealth, status, or being busy. It is found in the ability to simplify your life and focus on what truly matters. The secret is not in doing more, but in doing less of what doesn't serve you. Thank you for tuning in and spending your time here. If today's message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. What unnecessary burdens can you let go of? Remember, happiness isn't about doing more, it's about doing less of what doesn't serve you. If you found value in this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights on living with clarity, strength, and purpose. Stay focused, stay resilient, and as always, keep moving forward. See you next time.